Night does not simply fall over the Kgalagadi. It descends with a weight that feels almost intentional, as if the desert draws a long breath and then exhales pure darkness across the dunes. The last strands of daylight dissolve into the red sand, leaving behind a landscape sculpted by wind and silence. Out here, sound behaves strangely. It travels far yet reveals nothing. It echoes, then disappears. Even the wind moves differently, sliding across the crests of dunes, with a hush too clean to be natural. This is a place where a roar should rule the night, and yet it does not. For centuries, the Kgalagadi has been defined by the voices of its predators. Hyenas laugh in fractured crescendos, jackals bark in sharp bursts, and lions, always the lions, announce their presence with a thunderous roar that can travel nearly 10 kilometers. In this desert, sound is power, territory, identity. But somewhere, within this vast expanse of shifting red dunes, there exists a presence that defies this ancient law. Rangers first noticed it not through sight, but through absence. On nights when the temperature dropped and the sky opened wide with stars, something felt wrong. The dunes were alive with tracks fresh, deep, unmistakably lion, but the air carried none of the vibrations that should accompany such movement. No rumble, no challenge call, no mating roar, nothing. Just the soft imprint of massive paws and the eerie feeling that something large had passed close by without disturbing the silence. Some rangers described it as walking into a room where someone had just left, a sensation of presence lingering without evidence. Others said the silence was so complete it felt engineered, as if the desert itself were swallowing sound before it could form. And on more than one night, a ranger tracking a pride reported seeing shadows moving along the ridgeline, powerful shapes gliding with the unmistakable certainty of lions. Yet the landscape remained mute, as if these animals moved through a different layer of reality altogether. Here, in one of Africa's harshest deserts, a mystery has begun to take shape, a pride of lions that roam the night without the defining voice of their species. And this silence is not random. It is patterned, persistent, and deeply unnatural. Part 2. The first sightings. Rangers who heard nothing. The first confirmed encounters with the silent lions did not come from dramatic chase scenes or clear, sunlit observations. They came from late-night patrol logs, brief, understated notes written by rangers who were trained to notice everything, yet struggled to articulate what they had experienced. The reports all shared one strange similarity. Something was missing. One ranger, Peter Malan, recalled a night when the desert felt unusually alert. The sky was clear, the moon bright enough to cast sharp silhouettes of camelthorn trees across the sand. He and his partner tracked a set of fresh lion prints winding along the base of a dune prince, so recent the grains had not yet slumped back into place. They expected, at any moment, to hear a distant roar. In Kgalagadi, lions vocalize often, asserting dominance over enormous territories. Silence usually means no lions, but that night, silence followed them like a shadow. The deeper they moved into the dune valley, the more pronounced the quiet became. Crickets stilled, jackals stopped calling. Even the wind seemed hesitant, brushing the sand in thin, nervous strokes. Then, as they rounded a bend, Peter froze. Ahead of them, on the ridgeline, were three silhouettes: broad shoulders, thick manes, tails swaying slowly from side to side. Lions. No question. They were watching, yet the desert held its breath. No growl of warning, no rumble of irritation, not even the low chuffing sound lions use when communicating at close range. The trio slipped down the dune and disappeared among the shrubs with a grace that felt almost rehearsed. Their movement left no sound, no hint of their weight. Only tracks in the sand confirmed they were real. Other rangers soon filed similar accounts. A young intern reported following a trail of springbuck carcasses over 2 weeks, each kill consistent with lion behavior, yet made without the usual territorial roaring that follows a successful hunt. Another ranger described watching a lioness call her cubs using nothing but body posture and a flick of the tail. He waited for the accompanying vocalization, but it never came. Word spread quietly within the park staff. There's a pride out here that doesn't roar. It was an idea so contradictory to everything known about lions that many dismissed it as misinterpretation, equipment failure, or mere coincidence. But the sightings continued, and the patterns sharpened. The lions were real. Their silence was real. And the mystery was beginning to demand attention. Part 3. The silent hunts. Predators that kill without warning. Predators announce themselves in many ways through scent, movement, and above all, sound. But the hunts attributed to this pride did not fit any known pattern. The first clues emerged not from direct sightings, but from scenes left scattered across the dunes, springbok carcasses positioned in unnatural silence, drag marks with no accompanying tracks from frightened herds, and kill sites where even scavengers hesitated to linger. Everything suggested lions. Yet the environment lacked the acoustic signature that always accompanies their presence. A typical lion hunt in the Kgalagadi is a dramatic event. Even when approaching quietly, lions communicate constantly. A low growl when coordinating position, a chuff to signal flanking moves, a brief roar to assert dominance after a successful takedown. But the hunts tied to this pride seemed to unfold as if sound itself had been removed from the equation. Rangers pieced together one such hunt using infrared footage and spoor analysis. The sequence began with a herd of gemsbok grazing at dusk, their ears relaxed, their posture calm. Normally, lions approaching would send vibrations across the sand, subtle, but detectable to prey evolved to survive predation. This time, the herd remained undisturbed until the final seconds. A lioness appeared in the footage first, a pale figure emerging from behind a dune, moving with precision, muscles coiling under her skin. Behind her, a second lioness advanced in perfect sync. Neither emitted a single sound. Even their breathing, usually visible as vapor in the cold desert night, seemed muted. The gemsbok herd reacted too late. By the time they sensed movement, the lionesses were already within meters. And when the strike came, it was instantaneous, clean, coordinated, executed with such control, it resembled a practiced choreography. What followed was even stranger. Most lion prides roar after a successful hunt. It's a declaration, a territorial signal, and a communication method rolled into one. But here, the landscape remained silent. No roar of triumph, no gathering call. The pride materialized from the darkness to feed, eat in silence, and melt back into the dunes without disturbing the night. This pattern repeated itself again and again. Kill sites with no vocalization, scavengers arriving late, as if the absence of sound had delayed their instinctive response. Prey species behaving erratically, unable to gauge the presence of a top predator because the usual acoustic cues had vanished. The more evidence rangers collected, the more unsettling the truth became. These lions were hunting as if they had evolved for absolute stealth, an adaptation no one had ever documented in their species. Part 4. The behavioral puzzle. Why lions roar in the first place? To understand why the silence of this pride is so disturbing, one must first understand what a roar truly means to a lion. It is not just a sound, it is a declaration of presence, a boundary line, a complex broadcast of strength, identity, and command. In the animal kingdom, few vocalizations carry the same evolutionary weight. A lion's roar can travel across 10 kilometers of open desert, reverberating through ribs, sand, and air like a physical force. It is designed to shape territory, enforce hierarchy, and maintain social cohesion within the pride. When a male roars, he is not simply announcing himself. He is advertising dominance to rivals and assuring protection to his own. Females use roaring to locate cubs or coordinate movements across long distances. Even subadults practice roaring as part of their path to maturity. In stable prides, roaring functions almost like a signature, distinct, identifiable, and vital for survival, which is why silence is not normal. Silence is not adaptive. Silence in lions is a violation of the blueprint. Researchers who reviewed the ranger reports struggled to reconcile the behavior with established biology. Some began by ruling out simple explanations: weather patterns, wind direction, sound absorption by dunes. But the silence occurred across varied conditions. Others hypothesized stress or human presence might suppress vocalization. But these lions were observed even in remote sectors where human interference was minimal. The more the data accumulated, the more glaring the anomaly became. For a pride to never roar, not during conflict, not during mating seasons, not to call cubs, not after a hunt defied all known models of lion communication. Monitoring equipment set up across several dune valleys recorded hyena, whoops, jackal barks, owl calls, even the faint rustle of beetles crossing sand, yet never a single lion roar from the pride being tracked. This silence created cascading effects. Without roaring, territorial boundaries became ambiguous. Other prides did not respond or shift accordingly, leaving territories strangely fluid. Without vocal coordination, the pride relied more heavily on visual cues, body posture, and scent-marking methods, typically secondary to sound. Their movements were tighter, more synchronized, almost wolf-like in their cohesion. Some ethologists began asking uncomfortable questions. If roaring defines lions, what does it mean when a pride abandons it? Is this a breakdown or the emergence of something new? In Kgalagadi, behavior is often shaped by necessity. Extreme heat, scarce prey, and vast open ranges force animals to push the edges of their instincts. Perhaps silence here is not a flaw, but an adaptation waiting to be understood. Part 5. Theories of silence. Trauma, mutation, or evolution. As the reports gained traction among researchers, a central question emerged. What could drive a pride of lions, an apex predator built on sound, to abandon one of its most defining behaviors? The search for answers led scientists, rangers, and wildlife biologists to propose several theories. None were conclusive, but each revealed a different layer of possibility behind the mystery. One of the earliest hypotheses centered on physical trauma. Lions often injure their throats during territorial fights, especially males who grapple with rivals using their jaws and throat muscles. A damaged larynx can diminish vocal range or mute roaring entirely, but this theory faltered quickly. For trauma to silence an entire pride, every adult member, males, females, even subadults, would need to have suffered similar injuries. No evidence supported such widespread damage, and the lion's breathing, feeding, and general health appeared normal. A second theory involved genetic mutation, a rare alteration affecting the vocal folds that produce the resonance of a roar. Researchers pointed to isolated cases of genetic drift in desert-adapted animals, where unusual traits survive because the environment rewards them. Could a silent lion have passed its mutation to cubs, creating a lineage of roarless individuals? The idea was compelling but difficult to prove without DNA samples, which the elusive pride never allowed researchers to collect. Next came the behavioral adaptation theory, championed by ecologists familiar with the extreme pressures of the Kgalagadi. Food scarcity, higher temperatures, and the expanding range of rival predators may have pushed this pride toward a form of stealth hunting. By eliminating roaring and acoustic beacon that can draw competitors, the pride may have carved out an advantage in a desert that punishes inefficiency. Silence, in this frame, becomes a survival strategy. Another possibility explored the idea of cultural transmission. Lions, like many social animals, can pass behavioral patterns across generations. If one influential lion, perhaps a matriarch or dominant male, ceased roaring for unknown reasons, cubs might mimic the behavior until silence became the norm. Over years, what began as an anomaly could evolve into the pride's defining characteristic. Then there were the more speculative explanations. Climate shifts altering acoustic behavior, stress-induced suppression of vocalization, epigenetic changes triggered by prolonged drought cycles. None of these fully explain the pride's absolute and consistent silence. Among local communities, however, the explanation was simpler and far older. They believed the desert had taken the lions' voices for a reason. Part 6. The Desert Ghosts. Local legends and old folklore. Long before rangers began documenting the silent lions, the people who lived along the shifting borders of the Kgalagadi had already given them a name: Quietest, the ones who walk without sound. To the San and the Kgalagadi-speaking communities, these lions were not a new mystery. They were an old presence resurfacing, a reminder of stories told around fires long before scientific surveys and radio collars shaped our understanding of the desert. Elders described them as shadows that learned to hunt like the wind, moving with purpose but never with noise. In their tales, these lions were not feared for their ferocity, but for their silence. A lion that does not roar, one elder said, is a lion that listens more than it speaks, and anything that listens too much learns what it should not know. Such stories frame the silent lions not as biological anomalies, but as creatures occupying the thin boundary between the physical and the spiritual. In certain villages, their appearance was treated as an omen, sometimes of drought, sometimes of shifting seasons, sometimes simply of great change. The desert, they believed, took or returned voices according to a balance only it understood. One legend speaks of a time when the dunes were younger and water flowed more freely. A powerful male lion, the story goes, defied the spirits of the desert by roaring endlessly, trying to command a land that was not his to command. As punishment, the desert swallowed his voice and the voices of his descendants, forcing them to walk the dunes in a hush that would forever separate them from other lions. Whether meant as metaphor or warning, the tale captures something that modern researchers struggle to articulate: the profound strangeness of a predator stripped of its sound. Travelers passing through Kgalagadi still recount sightings that resemble myth more than wildlife encounter. A shape moving along the ridge at dusk, too large to be a jackal but too silent to be a lion. The gleam of eyes reflecting starlight from behind a dune, accompanied by no vocalization, no growl, not even the rustle of grass. To them, the silent lions feel less like animals and more like echoes of an older desert beings, shaped not just by evolution, but by memory and story. And yet, beneath the layers of folklore, there are kernels of truth. People who have lived in the desert for generations often notice patterns before scientists do. Their stories hint at a long-standing behavioral thread, one that may stretch farther back than any ranger record or biological study. If silence has lived in the bloodline of these lions longer than we realize, then this mystery might not be a recent adaptation. It might be an inheritance one the desert has guarded fiercely. Part 7. Night Tracking. Following a roarless pride. When the first infrared observations began, researchers expected the silent lion reports to dissolve under the scrutiny of hard data. Instead, the cameras only deepened the mystery. Night after night, the equipment captured a pattern so consistent and so unnatural that even seasoned trackers found themselves unsettled. The pride moved through the dunes with an eerie precision, almost as if they had agreed to erase their presence from the desert. The tracking teams operated from high ridges, where wind exposure was strongest, hoping the elevation would carry sound toward them. But even at close range, the lions remained impossibly quiet. No footfalls, no breathing, not even the faint grunt lions often make when adjusting their pace. Each movement appeared intentional, coordinated, and utterly soundless, like shadows rehearsed in choreography no human was meant to witness. On one particular night, a field team followed the pride using thermal imaging from nearly a kilometer away. The lions appeared as glowing shapes against the cold sand, 3 adults and 2 subadults, weaving through a narrow valley. Their formation was unusual. Instead of spreading wide or staggering, as most prides do when moving under cover of darkness, they advanced in a tight, narrow line, head to tail, like a column of ghostly forms sliding across the desert floor. At one point, the lead lioness paused and lifted her head toward a distant herd of springbok. The others froze behind her. Normally, lions communicate with soft grunts or low-frequency calls inaudible to humans, coordinating their approach through subtle vocal cues. But this pride exchanged information through posture, tiny shifts in ear angle, tail movement, and shoulder tension. The effect was uncanny. A full hunting strategy passed along a silent chain. When the pride split to flank the herd, the team prepared for the characteristic pre-attack rumble that many lions emit. A deep vibration felt more than heard, yet nothing came. The lions accelerated from a walk to a sprint with zero acoustic warning, an impossible level of quiet for animals their size. Even the springbok reacted late, as if they had been deprived of the instinctive cues prey rely on to survive. The thermal footage later revealed something even stranger. During the chase, when the pride should have produced heat signatures from heavy breathing, their thermal profiles remained unusually stable. The lions were exerting themselves, yet they emitted none of the thermal spikes typical of vocalization or exertion. Whether this was coincidence, physiology, or part of a deeper adaptation remained unclear, but it added one more layer to a growing puzzle. For the researchers observing from afar, the sensation was universal. These lions were behaving like predators, refined by silence creatures, shaped not by the roar that defines their species, but by its deliberate absence. Part 8. When silence becomes a weapon. In most ecosystems, silence is a vulnerability. Prey animals rely on stealth. Predators rely on sound, both to coordinate and to intimidate. But in the Kgalagadi, the rules appear to have inverted. For this pride, silence is not a deficiency. It is an advantage sharpened by landscape, climate, and scarcity. Over time, rangers began to notice a pattern. Wherever the silent lions hunted, prey animals behaved as though a crucial sense had been taken from them. They reacted later. They scattered poorly. They hesitated in moments where hesitation meant death. Normally, prey in the desert is attuned to a lion's presence well before visual contact. Vibrations in the sand, distant rumbles in the air, territorial calls carried by the wind, these cues form an early warning system honed across millennia. But the silent pride stripped the environment of those cues. They approached like a weather phenomenon rather than a predator, advancing with no signature to anticipate. It was not simply quiet hunting, it was absence masquerading as safety. One documented hunt illustrated this reversal with chilling clarity. Rangers observed a herd of blue wildebeest grazing along a dry riverbed at dusk. The wind was steady, shifting sand in thin sheets. Nothing suggested danger. But as the night cooled, the silent pride emerged across the dunes. They moved toward the herd with such control that not even the sand cascaded beneath their paws. By the time the wildebeest reacted, the lions were already within striking distance, forming a crescent that collapsed inward with near-perfect timing. The kill itself was swift. No roars followed. No territorial declaration rippled across the desert. Instead, the silence seemed to deepen, pooling around the feeding lions like an additional layer of camouflage. By the time scavengers noticed the kill site, the predators had vanished back into the dunes. This absence of vocal display created an unexpected tactical advantage beyond hunting success. Reduced competition. Hyenas, which normally rush toward a lion roar to challenge or scavenge, often arrived late. Jackals reacted the same way. Even vultures appeared to take longer to gather, as if deprived of the audio cues that typically trigger feeding behavior. The silent pride thus fed longer and defended less, saving energy in an environment where every calorie matters. Some researchers began to ask whether this behavior was merely an anomaly or the early shape of a new ecological niche. Lions that do not dominate through intimidation, but thrive by removing their presence from the sensory landscape entirely. In the context of desert survival, where competition is punishing and prey is limited, silence transforms from an oddity into a tactical evolution, one that the environment itself may be selecting for. If roaring was once the symbol of the lion's dominance, then here, in the red dunes of the Kgalagadi, silence has become its most powerful weapon. Part 9. The future of the silent lions. Threats and unanswered questions. As sightings accumulated and data points sharpened, one truth became undeniable. This pride possessed a behavioral identity unlike any documented elsewhere in Africa. Yet with every new insight came an equally large uncertainty. What does the future look like for lions who have relinquished their roar? And more urgently, can they survive long enough for science to understand them? The Kgalagadi is not merely harsh, it is accelerating toward deeper extremes. Prolonged drought cycles have thinned herds of springbok, oryx, and wildebeest. Seasonal pans that once filled with brief, life-giving water now remain dry for entire years. In this tightening ecosystem, every predator is pushed toward competitive edges, and even subtle disadvantages can be fatal. Silence may benefit hunting, but it may also hinder territory defense. Without roaring, the pride cannot broadcast dominance across long distances, making them vulnerable to intrusion by larger, more vocal prides. Some trackers have already observed incursions from neighboring groups, whose males use roaring as acoustic intimidation to claim ground. In these clashes, the silent pride is at a disadvantage. They cannot respond in kind, They cannot project strength into the night. They must rely on scent marking and physical presence tools, less effective in the desert's shifting winds. If their territory shrinks, prey access may diminish, tightening the survival margins further. Researchers are also wrestling with deeper questions. If the silence stems from genetic factors, what happens if this lineage disappears before it can be studied? Could a unique evolutionary branch vanish without leaving a trace? Conversely, if the silence is a cultural or behavioral adaptation, could it spread to neighboring prides facing similar pressures? What begins as an anomaly might ripple outward, reshaping lion social dynamics in ways not yet imagined. Then there is the issue of disease and human encroachment. As climate stress pushes wildlife toward waterholes near park boundaries, the risk of conflict with farmers increases. Lions that cannot roar may be harder to detect, harder to deter, harder for communities to understand. Conservation efforts depend heavily on predictability, knowing when lions are near, hearing their nightly calls to track movement and prevent clashes. Without vocal cues, the silent pride moves beneath that radar, both unseen and unheard. Even their reproductive future is uncertain. If silence affects mating communication, could it reduce breeding success? Or might their close, highly synchronized behavior compensate for the loss of vocal coordination? No one knows yet. The pride's numbers remain small, and without long-term observation, predictions are fragile. But perhaps the most haunting question is the simplest. Is this silence a clue about the desert's ecological future, or a warning? If a pride of lions can lose its voice to survive, what else might the Kgalagadi reshape in the decades ahead? Does silence mark the beginning of a behavioral revolution, or the final chapter of a lineage pushed beyond its limits? For now, the desert keeps its secrets, and the lions keep their silence. Part 10. Closing montage. What does a roar mean when it disappears? As dawn approaches, the Kgalagadi shifts once more. The dunes, moments ago wrapped in the anonymity of night, begin to reveal their shapes under the first thin strands of morning light. Shadows pull back. Colors return. The desert exhales. Yet the silence remains an echo that lingers even as birds begin their tentative calls and the daytime world reassembles itself. Somewhere out there, beyond the rolling crests of red sand, the silent pride is settling after another night of spectral movement. No tracks of struggle, no standoff roars to announce victory or defeat, only a muted trail carved lightly across the earth, already half erased by the wind. In most landscapes, lions define the soundscape. Their roars thread through savanna nights like thunder rolling across grass. They reassure cubs, warn intruders, and proclaim territories. They are the pulse of the ecosystem. But here, in this desert carved by extremes, that pulse has shifted into something quieter, something that challenges what we believe about one of the world's most iconic predators. If roaring is the essence of a lion's identity, then what does it mean when that voice fades? Does silence signal loss or transformation? The behavior of this pride forces us to reconsider long-held assumptions, that survival always favors power displayed loudly, that dominance must be declared, that ecosystems remain constant in their rules. Yet the Kgalagadi has always been a sculptor of exceptions. Its heat, wind, and scarcity compel life to adapt in ways that bend the boundaries of instinct. Perhaps these lions are not broken. Maybe they are evolving, reshaping the blueprint of their species in response to pressures we barely understand. Or perhaps the desert itself has demanded silence, an ancient, unspoken negotiation between predator and landscape, written in sand rather than sound. As we watch the sun climb above the dunes, painting the world in gold, one question continues to drift across the horizon. Is the silence of these lions a new language carved by the future, or a warning carried from the past? Whichever truth lies beneath the shifting sands, one thing is clear: the Kgalagadi is listening, and so should we.